How about two snakes coming together over a black sun? A magnificent standard.
The only snakes I know of are those of Set and those cursed towers. They have spread to every city. 2-3 years ago, it was just another snake coat. Now, everywhere. It is said that they are deceivers.
Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, The Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have a brand new Dungeons & Dragons video. Now with that being said, what I'm going to be discussing today is rumors. And essentially using rumors in your tabletop gaming, mostly Dungeons & Dragons focused for this video. But it really does go with really any tabletop gaming game that you're doing. So, the first thing I want to bring up, the reason this video, I kind of put this video together, is because of actually Conan the Barbarian. I recently sat down and watched Conan the Barbarian again. Love that movie, one of my favorite movies. It's one of the top fantasy sword and sorcery type films. If you haven't seen it, go see it. But with that being said, there was a moment in the film, which I played at the beginning of this video. Hopefully YouTube clears that, but there's a scene in the video where they're talking to a street vendor. And the street vendor is giving them, essentially they're looking for a standard. And the street vendor brings up the fact that the only snakes he knows of is in the Tower of the Serpent. And he talks about the jeweled serpent's eye within the Tower of the Serpent, which essentially inspires Subutai and Conan to sneak into the Tower of the Serpent and actually steal the eye of the serpent. And I noticed that and thought to myself, you know, that's really brilliant. Using rumors or myths, if you will, to essentially form a quest and nudge characters in the direction that the game master would want them to be nudged. So that's what I'm going to discuss today. Now, understand when it comes to doing something like this, of course, your characters have to interact with the world somehow, however it may be. Now, there's a lot of good ways to deploy rumors. One of the best ways I like is actually overhearing discussions or even being told by tavern patrons about different things in the area. Actually, this was another instance where Conan in the Tower of the Elephant, he essentially found out information about the Tower of the Elephant and the great jeweled prizes within the Tower of the Elephant because of essentially rumors within a tavern. Now, with that being said, there's also legends, which legends are basically just what I said they are. They're legends. They can be pulled from books. They could be information pulled from stone tablets. And essentially, they're nothing more than what people believe to be legends, wives' tales, if you will, which in your setting should turn out to be true, or at least that's the general idea is that you feed your characters a legend and they find out it is true. One good example of this was actually in the movie Dungeons & Dragons, Wrath of the Dragon God, where they find out that there's actually a black dragon that was entrapped in a mountain, and it was actually in a deep slumber within that mountain, which becomes part of the plot for the movie itself. But it was an interesting way that essentially the character was able to go, wait a minute, I know something about this place that's nothing more than a legend. And then they realize, oh, there really actually is a black dragon in a deep slumber within this mountain. So that's a very interesting way of doing it. Another one is superstition. Superstition is a great way to go. Haunted forest, haunted houses, myths of werewolf, myths of werewolves, superstitions of werewolves along the road, or trolls sleeping under the bridge. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what superstition is. It's more or less ghosts and goblins, if you will. Great for starting off maybe more of a mystery type quest. Now, with that being said, there's many tools you can use to employ your rumors, if you will. Now, one of my favorite ones is word of mouth, because word of mouth travels around. And the nice thing about word of mouth is I could come up with multiple things that kind of pokes at the myth or the legend or the rumor, if you will, but I can make little tweaks to it. Have you ever played the telephone game? Yeah, the message may begin with Janie's going out tonight, and by the time you get through 4 or 5 people, it ends with want to go for a cheeseburger. As you can tell, the message quickly changes. So that's one reason I like to go with word of mouth, is because people might give different stories, and it leads to a little bit of confusion for players. Word of mouth is also another good way to go, because obviously if you're within a village or a town or whatever, multiple people are going to hear different stories and they're going to believe different things within an area. So that's a really good way of working it. Of course, also you could have, per se, the braggart at the tavern, the drunk braggart, bragging about some haunted mansion that he knows where there's tons of treasure, and the players could just be kind of listening in very closely just to glean information, if you will. Another one, too, when it comes to word of mouth, would also be the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper might know things or might hear of things. Good example was the beginning of the video where I discussed a little bit about Conan the Barbarian, and there was that scene that I played for you that, he talks about the Tower of the Serpent. Of course, the shopkeepers are going to know and hear lots of different things. Now, of course, once again, this becomes kind of the telephone game where he heard something from one person and he kind of interprets it, or only remembers maybe bits and pieces of it, doesn't necessarily know the actual truth of the rumor. Now, another way you could go about this too is if you're kind of out in the wilderness, is maybe a fairy or some type of fae or a nymph or something like that warns the players of danger that she knows about in the woods. Actually, recently I did something like this where I used a druid who was actually more or less, if you will, the local apothecary for the village. She lived outside of town and she knew about various things that was happening outside of town, and actually directed the players where they needed to go for their quest. Now, another one, this one's more along the lines of being pretty deployable for legends, if you will, would be to use hieroglyphic. Oh my God. Hieroglyphic. Oh, God. Sometimes I am so bad with English. I don't know why. Anyway, hieroglyphics. And essentially, this could be nothing more than a stone tablet, or it could be a mural on a wall, anything along those lines, maybe within a dungeon itself that might indicate a location of buried treasure, or maybe a hidden treasure chamber, or maybe even a location to another dungeon. So that's one good thing you could also go with. Now, for me, I usually go with along the lines of legends when it comes to this. Same way with ancient books. Ancient books might have all kinds of useful information, and once deciphered, the players might find out about a legendary sword that's held deep within a dungeon, and they decipher the map and the whole 9 yards, and it leads them to where they need to be. Now, with another one, that being said, too, is also treasure maps. Treasure maps are essentially another type of rumor, if you will, that can be deployed to essentially set up quests and things of that nature, because essentially a treasure map is nothing more than a printed rumor until it's found to be true. Am I correct? And all this could just lead to some type of ancient ruins. And, that's where the treasure is going to be, right? The big thing, though, about the rumors is they should all lead to some type of treasure and, of course, danger. But anyway, folks, I am going to wrap today's video up at that. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in. and have yourself a wonderful day.